What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I was sitting here in the boat rigging up some rods for Florida, and I just had an idea for a video for you guys. Hopefully you guys learn this. Hopefully it's a little tip that'll help you, one, catch some more bass, and two, save some aggravation out on the water. This is something that I learned, a few years ago fishing vegetation in Florida, and that's just choosing the right hook. I like to use trocar hooks for all of my fishing, definitely my worm fishing. So there's a couple different options when it comes to worm fishing. You got your round bend, you got your straight shank, you got an EWG, tons of different options for fishing a worm, but each one excels at a little different scenario, and I want to dive in and tell you guys my opinion on that and what I like to use each hook for throughout the day or even throughout the season while I'm fishing a worm. So we're going to start with the round bend hook, because this is probably my go-to hook for a lot of different reasons. I just really like this hook. It sticks them well, it catches fish, and it comes in a lot of great sizes. All of the trocars have the laser sharpened hook, so if you look really close, you probably can't see it on camera, but there's actually 3 points on the hook point, so it's laser sharpened that it is absolutely sticky sharp and catches those fish. It's got a good barb on it, perfect gauge hook, not too heavy, not too light. And this is the Trocar TK100, just the HD worm hook. But as I was saying, this is my go-to hook simply because of the gap. The term gap in a hook is basically the distance from here to here, from the bend in the hook to the hook point, okay? And, you got a bigger J here, things like that. So whenever you rig up a worm on a hook like this, getting ready with my Yamamoto Speed Syncos here. Okay, so let's rig up this worm, like you would your standard Texas rig with this worm hook. It fits the worm perfectly. And then when you rotate like that, the head of that worm is tucked in there, so it stays on there well. This hook keeps that worm on the hook very, very well. Now you rig that up. So you got a good distance between here and here. So when that fish bites down, there's room for that bait to move and expand, and that's what you want. It may rip up your worm, but you're going to have that distance between here and here. So if a fish bites down here and you set the hook and his mouth slides back, he's still got that gap right there to hook him in the upper lip. Now, like I said, this is my go-to hook, but I lean away from this hook whenever I get in heavy vegetation, whether it's grass, hydrilla, milfoil, reeds, whatever it may be. Lily pads are really bad for this. But you see the blessing of this bend keeping the hook or the worm up on the hook also turns into a catch-all. So any type of vegetation that you swim through, this 90-degree bend on this hook right here is going to catch all that grass. It's going to get your bait hung up. It's going to bring in grass that's floating, and it's going to foul up your worm, and it's not going to look right. So whenever I get in that heavy cover grass situation, that's when I will switch to a straight shank hook. A lot of people use these for flipping. That's just your standard J hook. This is the Trocar TK130. But for fishing a worm, you can take this hook like so and rig it up very similar to the way we did with the worm hook, but now we've got a smooth, straight path along the bottom of that worm. So whenever you swim this through heavy cover vegetation lily pads, it just glides right over them and it doesn't get caught up. It doesn't bring in the dead grass. It doesn't get hung up in the grass. So it just swims smoothly right through there. And that little tip right there, that trick will save you so much aggravation from getting hung up in the lily pads, the reeds, the grass, and it'll make your bait be more productive in those scenarios because you're not going to have fouled up grass on the bait. And in turn, it's still a great hook. It's got a lot of gap here. When a fish bites that, he's got a lot of room to get hooked. So I switch to the straight shank whenever I get into that heavy cover grass. And that is a excellent tip right there to help you guys catch some more bass and in turn save your baits and save yourself some aggravation from having to fix your bait and take off garbage every other cast. So the other option would be the very standard, let's see if we got one here. I got them out of the pack. There's one. The EWG style hook. But me personally, I don't like this hook as much. This is the Trokar TK110. I just really don't like this style as much versus the worm hook. And I'll show you why. We already talked about it. But if you match up the eye of the hook here, you'll see the difference in the gap on the worm hook versus the EWG. There's so much more distance between the eye and the hook point rather than an EWG. An EWG is basically in line with the eye of the hook. You see that you can lay your finger basically straight across here and it makes a perfect line. Whereas the worm hook, you can lay your finger across here and you're going to get hooked every time. So that's pretty much the easiest way to explain this, and I like that difference, that gap right there that helps you hook those fish and catch more. So that's why I don't go towards the EWG style hook right off the bat. Now I will use this hook for very specific situations and we can dive into that in another video, but I really don't like this hook for fishing the worm like we're discussing here today. Well, that's pretty much it, guys. Try this little trick next time you're fishing a worm. If you're fishing open water, brush, that kind of stuff, it's hard to beat just the old school TK100 HD worm hook. But whenever you get into that heavy vegetation and you start collecting all that grass on this hook, switch to the straight shank, the TK130, and it will save you a bunch of time, aggravation, and it'll help you put some more fish in your boat. So appreciate you guys watching. Leave me any likes and comments down below. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and we'll see you guys next time.